still hold dissatisfaction about not being able to witness his execution. In contrast, Saddam Hussein's public hanging satisfied Americans' vengeful need for justice.
We can all agree that we were able to sleep a little sounder knowing that these disturbing militant leaders were completely wiped from the face of the earth.
The firing squad should be legalized in Georgia because it morally comforts Americans by fulfilling their craving for the eye for an eye ideal. In this speech, Alyssa, Katie, and I will be discussing the effectiveness of the firing squad, how they provide us with righteous justice, and how they are morally comforting to Americans. While the other group will argue that death by firing squad is more cruel than lethal injection, this just is not true.
Firing squads have increased effectiveness and precision over lethal injection. According to law professor Deborah Deno, firing squad is the only form of execution for which people are trained. It's the most certain and expert way of execution, and from all we know, it's the quickest. In order to be one of the 5 shooters in the firing squad, you must be a trained marksman. However, the people in charge of administering the lethal injection are a group of untrained, unknowledgeable prison employees. It is for this reason that lethal injections are often botched.
The following is a story from Hal Schindler after he witnessed the firing squad execution of John Albert Taylor. The lapse time from the moment the warden pulled the hood over Taylor's head to the instant that 4 .30 caliber bullets struck his chest was only about 45 seconds. He was dead before the doctor could move to make the pronouncement. As quickly as the breath exploded from his chest, it was over. This eyewitness account verifies the effectiveness that firing squads have developed. Our counterparts may argue that firing squad constitutes a more inhumane death than a lethal injection would, but according to Hunter Schwartz of the Washington Post, lethal injections have lasted between 20 minutes to over an hour, and the prisoners have been seen gasping for air, grimacing, and convulsing during their execution. This quote blatantly shows how the lethal injection can have horrifying and unpredictable results. These situations happen even after the serum has been checked for abnormalities. It cannot be determined how each individual will act to the serum, so therefore it's like Russian roulette. You don't know if the criminal will go easily and pain-free or seizing and gasping for air.
In conclusion of our first main point, firing squads are determined to be a more effective method of execution than lethal injection. Because of this effectiveness, they easily provide righteous justice, which brings us to our second main point.
Firing squad should be defined as a means to obtain righteous justice.
In a speech given by George W. Bush to Americans after the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, he says, "Whether we bring our enemies to justice or bring justice to our enemies, justice will be done." After these attacks on our country, all of Americans felt a great number of things, among them grief, anger, and a great sense of purpose to right these wrongs. This quote from our former president shows that our country feels the need for justice to be served for these wrongdoings. After his speech, George W. Bush's approval ratings went up from about 50% to 90%. These were his highest approval ratings that he achieved during both of his terms as president. This shows how much America rallied behind him with the passion they felt to bring justice to those who had hurt our citizens, just as the firing squad brings justice to criminals.
In 2010, Ronnie Lee Gardner was put to death after committing 2 murders, and he chose to be executed by firing squad. He did this by saying, "I lived by the gun, I murdered by the gun, and I will die by the gun." This shows when firing squad can give us that feeling of achieving righteous justice. The need to feel that justice is not limited only to the victims or their families, but is also felt by those that committed the crimes. This man felt that his punishment should fit his crime, and this is what would bring him to justice.
People should not attempt to define any form of execution as humane. It's not the same thing as humanely euthanizing an old pet. These rapists and murderers should not feel the same comfort as your family dog does in his final moments. The fact that the term is execution and not human euthanasia is a sign that the point isn't to comfort these people before their deaths.
Along with defining righteous justice, firing squads are also able to comfort Americans morally, which brings us to our third and final main point.
Firing squads morally comfort Americans because in this form of execution, The punishment fits the crime committed by the criminal. The American want for revenge and for the punishment to fit the crime is like young siblings fighting over a toy. We have all seen the brother and sister fighting over one toy in the grocery store that the mom would assume they could share nicely. And we all know what happens when the little boy loses the tug-of-war over the sacred toy. He hits his sister. It would be ideal if the sister would just ignore this and move on, but our human nature does not allow this. Undoubtedly, the little girl will hit her brother back, serving the boy with a punishment equal to the crime that he did to her. This analogy shows that our need for revenge starts as small children and continues into our adult life, whether we realize it or not.
According to history professor William Keeler at Boston University, Osama bin Laden's execution was an incredibly symbolic event and it gave closure for 9/11. This is an example of an eye for an eye situation that was morally comforting to Americans. People wanted to see bin Laden pay for his crimes, and this thirst for American justice does not disappear with the crimes of a lesser-known felon such as one on death row. Some may say that a firing squad is inhumane and cruel, but our human nature wants to see people pay for what they have done. According to a survey of 800 adults by Heart Research and Public Opinion Strategies for NBC News, if lethal injection becomes unavailable, 58% of these adults are open to more primitive methods of execution, such as firing squad, hanging, gas chamber, and electrocution. It is apparent that a majority of people do not mind the inhumane methods of execution and may even be for them. In the eyes of these people, it does not matter if the criminal is executed nicely and humanely euthanized, they just want them executed no matter the method.
So in summary of our third and final main point, execution by firing squad offers moral satisfaction to the American people.
Through the use of this speech, it is made clear that death by firing squad is not only a more sure form of execution, but it also plays to our basic human needs. Legalizing firing squad would provide a more effective form of execution, implement righteous justice, and meet the basic principles of the eye for an eye punishment that Americans long for. As quoted by Beth Ditto, I'm a great believer in karma, and the vengeance that it serves up to people who are deliberately mean is generally enough for me.